Yeah, good morning, guys.
We were kind of gathering last thoughts before going live, which is why we're a little late, discussing some talking points. Um, but if you guys want to chime in, our friends, viewers, if you've ever heard of the Doris Bither case and what did you think of it? Sorry, toe stuck in the throat. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think the thing that really caught my attention with this one years ago was the fact that UCLA took interest in this case,
Yeah.
came in and was like, let's see what's really going on in this house of yours. Hey, Vicky. Hello, everybody. We are going over the Doris Bither case. And if you haven't heard of it, Doris Bither caught the attention of two gentlemen from UCLA. Because, fun fact, back in that time frame, because this was 70s, in the 70s, UCLA actually had
Hmm.
a paranormal investigation group. And
Yeah.
so most of the info that I found was like she ran into these guys in a bookstore,
Hmm.
that she and her friend were looking on books how to deal with the paranormal things that she had going on in her house. They happened to be near there because that's what they investigate. And they kind of cross paths. And she was like, guess what? I got it in my house. And they're like, do tell. And they go out to her house. They're there in that first hour and they're like, you're crazy, because she finally admits to like she's being sexually assaulted by this ghost.
Hmm.
Now she keeps saying that there were three, a big one and two smaller. And I'm like, how do you know?
Right.
How do you know sizes of these entities, really? Now, there was a book and a movie. The movie came out, I think it was like 1982. I tried for days to find this. YouTube only has the trailers and little snippets. There are tons of people talking about this case all over YouTube. One of the main ones that we kind of referenced is this one here by Mr. Self Destruct. It's about an hour long, and I think he did a pretty good job going through what was presented. And then he
Hmm.
goes, yeah, but. So this case was featured on like Unsolved Mysteries and the Spirits TV show back way when it caught a lot of attention. But you guys, what do you think of this case as you were kind of watching and reading and investigating?
Yeah.
So, like, I will say the stuff that she was claiming wasn't outside of the realm of possibility. So, I'm not going to say that people can't be assaulted by spirits or things like that, or even poltergeist activity, which is, we've talked about is different. Poltergeist is manifested by somebody who's living, whereas an earthbound or something else would be, a separate entity altogether. So, I do think it's possible that somebody could be assaulted by a spirit. Do I think Doris was? I'm not sure. And we can go into it further, but I'm kind of the mind that maybe something was really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but some evidence, they weren't able to capture evidence. A lot of money and time and research was dumped into this. So we're going
Mm.
to make sure we come out with something. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think for sure something was going on in the house. I don't think it was nearly as bad as she said it was. And as for the sexual assault, I'm going to say no. She may have been knocked around a little bit. I mean, one of her kids did say he witnessed that. But there were some interesting facts presented. And actually, the guy who did the YouTube video, I think he's the one that brought it up. Um, she was an alcoholic. So, you had mentioned about her saying there was were three entities, three small, three or one bigger. She had three sons. So he had presented the idea that maybe she was blackout drunk each time that happened, and or drunk enough to forget exactly what was going on around her, and maybe she was trying to do stuff and the kids were like, yeah, no, you can't do that, you're going to hurt yourself or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that what she was calling the three entities assaulting her was really her kids trying to protect her from herself at those. Because also something that was said by the people who did the investigating is that the activity in the house increased when she was drunk.
Which makes sense if
So,
there is earthbounds, because that's a lot of energy they're going to feed off of it.
yeah.
Because
So
there's
I'm like,
little,
go ahead.
I was going to say lag. We keep going over one another. Her sons have said the drinking started after the assaults. But then, as you pointed out, in other instances, like the son was also a drunk.
Yeah.
So the family history of substance abuse.
Yeah.
But,
and the grandparents were alcoholics and abusive as well. So, and so that's where I'm leaning more toward like a poltergeist activity, because there is trauma. And I'm sure that she created something. I'm sure that some of it I think was poltergeist. Some of it I think may have been some more other type of spirit activity. But for the most part, I'm going to say, some of like the actual sexual assaults, I don't think actually happened. I think that was in her head. I'm not saying it's not possible for that to happen, because I don't know. I've never known anybody to actually experience that. And this is the first time I've actually heard of something like that happening to
never
somebody.
heard of an incubus or a succubus?
Well, I mean, of course,
You think of that as like a separate thing?
but but the way she described it is so different from those cases. That's why I didn't even put it in the same category with that.
What I kind of think, honestly, good morning. First of all, what Karen said. Okay, so yes, alcohol does provide a whole lot of energy.
Oh,
Furthermore, and this is in no way me criminalizing or anything, people who or judging people who use substances. I'm not. Addiction is an actual disease. No judgment here. But I do think that people who are already struggling with that, just like people who are struggling with mental health issues and with physical health issues, they're more susceptible to things like that, because so much of your energy is being used to just stay alive. Also, the fact if she was a trauma survivor, specifically because let's be real, 1 in 4 women, okay, 1 in 4 women has been sexually assaulted at some point in their life or abused in some sense. The odds of her actually being a victim of that before in her life as a middle-aged woman is pretty high. So if it was a poltergeist, which can happen from trauma, mental illness, substance use, and all these other things, it would make sense to me that the way that they would, the most traumatizing thing, or you know what I'm saying, would be sexual assault. So it could very well be a poltergeist and still have that happening. And I, even aside from the succubus and incubus stuff, and Richie, you'll be familiar with this, but the reformatory, some ghosts get real gross. Okay, like
they do get pretty weird.
Yep, getting your butt smacked or getting groped or whatever. It happens. So who says that if an entity isn't extremely strong, like why wouldn't they go as far as they could?
I mean, yeah, and that's like I said, I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. I'm just saying I think in her case, I don't think it really did. Because if you look at the situation that she was in all honesty, a story like hers, great money grab. And according to almost everything, They were living in a her and her three sons, sorry, were living in a condemned house. She was broke, raising three boys. She had a daughter who was never actually mentioned, but she was brought up in a different interview where it was said that they don't know why the daughter wasn't actually involved in the case, but it's believed that she had been taken away from her mom.
Wow.
So
And so it seemed to me like, you know, if you can take this small activity and blow it up as big as it became, I mean, just like just like with other famous cases we heard of, like uh, anything with Ed and Lorraine Warren attached to it, those people all ended up rich because those two blew up their case big. And it's the same concept. I mean, I feel, and listening to the way that the guy from UCLA was talking about the when he had found out about the book being written, the guy who was writing it had kept in touch with Doris. He had kept in touch with her the whole time. It just starts to feel to me like it was all just a big ruse. Like they took little activity and made it much bigger than what it actually was. And
That very well could be the case.
I'm not saying that most of it didn't happen. I'm just saying that I don't think all of it happened, and I think that they made it a lot bigger than what it actually was. Because they called it a poltergeist, but here's the thing. Even a normal spirit with enough strength can move a door, can shut a door, open a cabinet, can sling a pan across the room. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a poltergeist.
I know at one instance, I think it was, the pan, the distance that it is thrown goes from a couple feet to across, to suddenly it's across
and
the room.
That's another inconsistency. Things keep changing in the story from interview to interview too. That one, like you said, it had been a few feet originally, and then it was like across the room. And like the description of the entity that showed itself changed. And then the guys from UCLA and the mom was always saying it was three entities. Then the son, who said, oh, she didn't really have a drinking problem, who was then accused by his brother of also having a drinking problem, said that there were four entities in the house. And it's like, okay, there is so much inconsistency with everybody's stories. Like if we're all going through the same thing, like they're trying to tell us that everybody's seeing the exact same things, then why are there so many inconsistencies with the story? Like
So,
we all know that people experience paranormal things differently. Like we can all be in the same room and all have different experiences. But we're going to portray it that way. We're going to let you know we were all here. I experienced this, you experienced this, she experienced that, but they're all supposedly going through the same things and experiencing the exact same things, and yet there's so much inconsistency.
Okay, so Doris's background. She came from an affluent family. Rough childhood, was actually taken from her parents, living with the aunt and uncle. That went south. When the parents died, all the money got left to the brother. Mm-hmm. So she was kind of put into a destitute type of lifestyle from the rest of the family. Do we know what really alienated her from family? We do not. We don't know if she was a very rebellious person. We don't know if that family was just kind of like, boys are better, right. The son is the one to take over, whatever. We don't know. But once she found out that the brother got all of the money, she just pieced out with the family. She's like, fine, screw you guys. One
Right.
thing that I found very annoying in going through all of the history accounts of her kind of gathering who Doris was, I really hated that it was always pointed out that her children all had different fathers.
Right.
What does that have to do? It was almost kind of like the passive aggressive, putting her down, she deserved it type of thing.
Yeah.
So
even with the drinking and the addiction and stuff, like just because somebody is an alcoholic, especially given that you've experienced all this trauma, clearly, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that what she's saying isn't true.
Right.
Furthermore, too, like I'm not saying everything is real, and I'm not going to go into like the morality of it. Okay. But if I'm getting tormented by spirits and I'm also poor, you bet your butt I'm going to make some money off of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, because she was not getting any assistance from
Yeah.
any of the fathers.
Right. So
And
it's
some
like,
of those
you know what?
relationships were
You deserve
facilitated.
it, I feel like life maybe dealt you kind of a crappy hand. And if you want to make some money off of the, torment that you're going through, go right ahead. As far as like the inconsistencies with the story too, like I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a second. I know the devil doesn't need more advocates. Thank you, Ariana Maddox from Vanderpump Rules for that quote. But anyway, the devil doesn't need any more advocates, but with the inconsistencies, think about how like when people are interviewed, like by law enforcement and stuff like that after a crime, and if something fits too closely to a T, that it actually becomes suspicious because you rehearsed it so much. So for me, if it was a hoax and they had all of these people, and I'm not saying I 100% believe this, but if they had all these people that supposedly witnessed the same thing, you'd think they would all be like, this is what we saw. The pan flew 3 feet. That's it. Like they would maybe have gotten their story straight. It doesn't surprise me, I guess. Oh, the pan flew across the room. It reminds me of that grandpa that every time he tells a story, like the fish was this big and now it's this big and now it's this big and you caught the fish, but the details maybe are getting exaggerated the more you tell it. So there probably is a little bit of truth. Probably got stretched a little bit to get some notoriety. I'm sure that there was some pressure to get some results, given the fact that it was actually through like UCLA and stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of tough to gauge.
So one of the times that they went out, they brought 9 photographers to try and catch. So these are pictures. Well, okay, I was hoping they would stack one on top of the other, but it will not. So supposedly the 9 photographers, Doris is there in the middle with the arch over her, and the investigators kept seeing these balls of light shooting around the room.
Right.
I have not ever gotten to experience that. I'm not going to say that that can't or won't happen. But on film, this is what they got. Now, there's some debate about this, of whether or not it was a shutter speed. Somebody was like, there's something in front of the lens. And I'm like, I don't think there's something in front of the lens that, because you would see that does not look like a strap.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a string per se. So there's this one. And then the second one is this. So there was the whole like, well, the picture's changed and it's moved. Well, because they're moving around the room, you've got 9 photographers. So now in one of the documentary pieces that I watched, supposedly these pictures were submitted to a big magazine of the time, Photography for Today. And from what I found online, that is still, they have a website for it, but I could not find where they commented or documented, but supposedly they said these are legit. Like these are not faked. They are not tampered with. And I guess they featured it at one point, and that's what I was really looking for, was that feature. But if this was back in the 70s, it is now 2024. How far back are they really holding on to some of this stuff, right? So these are the 2 photos, and I did upload these into the Discord. So if you want to go back and look at them later, or you can Google, you'll find them. I could not find what was shown in one of them was they were using Polaroid.
Oh yeah.
where she was like, oh, it's right here, and it would be whited out. And my first response was, I remember Polaroid. If you mess up that picture, it does that.
Right.
And so they did 2 or 3 times. And then when she's like, well, it's moved away, they then took the picture of her still sitting there and it was clear. And I'm like, Polaroid is a very, very temperamental film.
Mhm.
It's very easy to mess those up, but that's what they had at the time. So I didn't put much into those pictures. These ones were the ones that I was most kind of like, about.
Wasn't there a question about too, like the type of camera they use? Because I remember at the end, like the one guy had kept
Yeah.
talking. I cannot remember the name of the camera because I am clueless when it comes to that stuff. But he was talking about how they'd used like these different cameras and all this stuff. But the ones that are shown are Polaroids, the one that he's showing. But he's like, that's not the camera that they said they used. Then he's also like, there were 9 photographers and all you caught was a few Polaroids. You know, like that's where he was a little bit, I don't know.
Here's where I'm going to take the other side instead of being on the skeptical side. What he did, what the guy that did the YouTube video did, was get confused. It was 2 different people. It was somebody different had the Polaroids versus the person who had these pictures. So it was 2 different cameras. The guy who had the Polaroids was I forget what his name was, but it was a completely different person from the one who presented these pictures.
Okay, gotcha.
So when he was going through all the information, I think he just got confused a little bit. Because that was one of my points too, but I watched that video like 3 or 4 times to make sure and I was like, so the last time I'm like, hold on. You said about something about the cameras. I'm like, but it was 2 separate people who submitted these photos. So we can't use that as an inconsistent point.
That's fair. And if there's 9 photographers, I guess one could argue that there would be at least 1 different type of camera in the room. So
but what I will say is at any given time, he had at least 25 other people in that house investigating at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there were still cameras, there were video cameras, and these are the only 2 pictures that they got out of everything over a 3-month period. I'm sorry. It's not good enough for me.
3 months. Sorry.
Well, I mean, how many times can you have whole groups of people go through Mansfield and nobody have a thing?
That's true too.
You don't know what you're looking for.
But also at the same time at Mansfield things aren't always happening. According to them, every single time they were all in the house, stuff was happening.
Here's my question.
And they were all experiencing it. They were all seeing the stuff and everything, and they were all doing this, doing that every single time they walked in the house. But over the period of the 2 to 3 months, but this is the only 2 pictures, and this is the only evidence that they caught over that time, even though there was constant activity while they were there.
Did they ever have a psychologist come in and like vet Doris or see if there was just like any, like, I would just assume because they're approaching it from such like a scientific standpoint that they would have maybe had her like evaluated mentally.
So one of the first time that they came out in talking with her, they were kind of all in until, she mentioned the sexual assault. And then they're like, you're crazy. And they did say, call this person, they're a psychologist.
Yes, they
so they did try to, but like there's not any good information going forward. Like, was she seeing somebody regularly? Did they tell her, like, if you want us to keep coming, we need proof that you're actually seeing somebody?
Yeah, like mentally well.
Yeah.
So with them like not believing her the second she mentioned sexual assault? Like, I'm sorry, but that grinds my gears. It does. It grinds my gears because it's like not to get. I don't want to say too much, but it's just like, oh, imagine that. Like, we don't believe the woman. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just frustrating, and because it can happen. Like, hasn't happened to me, whatever. But like, there are a lot of instances of that happening, and that isn't the first one. Maybe it's the first time somebody actually verbalized that, because if we're thinking of the time period, like,
I was gonna say it was a different time.
Even women who were assaulted by men who were alive, like, didn't really come through and weren't believed very often. So, you know, like that could have been the case too. But
it was also easy to blame them. You know, you're wearing the wrong clothing. You farted.
You're drunk. You know,
right?
You're drunk. You're a drunk, Doris. Like,
people are still trying to do that in 2024.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Imagine what it was like back in what it took place in the 70s.
Right.
So, I mean, first of all, if you're seeing ghosts, you're already crazy. Now you're telling me that a ghost sexually assaulted you, like, you have serious issues. Like, okay. So it wasn't that turned me away from the story. I'm like, you know, it's possible for that to happen. But I will say more on Emily, you asked about the psychologist thing. Apparently, so according to the guy who started everything, he was one of the first people in and everything. He said that the book shows that she did have some, help, and that, but he said that as far as he personally knows, she didn't. But she had also told the guy who wrote the book more about what was going on than what she told him. So he said it's possible that she did get help. Gotcha. So I'm like, okay, but without us knowing for sure that she got help, I'm still down to the trauma messed her up. So how much of it did she make up?
Yeah, it's just hard too, though, because it's like there's so many people.
And it's hard. It is hard. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
that's okay.
It's really hard for me to say that because the idea that she could have been assaulted in that way, I want to support her. I naturally want to support her and be, have her back. But at the same time, she did drink. She did have trauma. That we know there's no proof that she actually had a psychological evaluation done at all. So how much of what happened to her, or that she said happened to her, was possibly in her head, because you don't know. She was never, as far as we know, evaluated psychologically, which is a big thing. Like, if stuff like that's happening, we need to know. Like, we have to know, is there something, for lack of a better term right now, is there something mentally wrong with you?
Yeah.
Or because from there we can be like, okay, that can be part of what's happening here. I'm never going to say that psychological issues is the full scale of what's going on in that house, because I don't think that that's ever the case. And I don't like using the word crazy ever. But once again, we're in a whole different time period than what they were back then. So back then, saying crazy was like, I mean, they could use other words that we would never use today.
Well, another point for the poltergeist, there's 3 teenage boys in the house. Poltergeists happen around young people in and around puberty.
Yep.
Right.
So there we are.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I was waiting.
If she was an alcoholic, there could have been some issues between the boys and her, and they could have set this thing off on her, not realizing it.
I mean, maybe all of that is a possibility. This is one of the few that I lean a little more towards. She was going through something. Do I acknowledge that the book and movie probably blew it up, right? Because nobody's going to go watch a boring movie. But and I don't fault her in this case for like making money off of it, especially when she's got young kids that she's got to take care of. Because,
I said.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. I mean, you have to make a living.
The whole poltergeist. I'm like, well, you've got 3 young boys running around in that house, and one of the sons actually witnessed her being attacked, tried to help, got flung away, broke at least one arm in this.
Oh,
so
that's another inconsistency. That's another inconsistency.
Some that say 1 arm. There's some that say 2 arms. Both
there's
arms.
Some that say never happened.
There's
some that say it never happened. He never broke anything. So that's the thing. There's just so much inconsistency with the story. Like, it's 1 arm, 2 arms, no arms. Well, did he break a damn arm or not?
Like, there's got to be a medical record, okay? Like, he had to take to the doctor with broken arms. So
one of the accounts says that she was actually dating a gentleman, and there was a hospital visit. I guess he was injured because he tried to help her. And when he gets out, he's like, you know what? I'm out.
Bye.
Like,
I don't blame him.
I can't fight what I can't see. So, and then back on her own, trying to protect her kids, herself, So Kathy asks, and we're talking about the Doris Blither case in California back in the 70s. There was a movie in like 1982 released. It was exaggerated a little bit. But the fact that UCLA sent people out to investigate this was what really had me going, they're putting money out. Now, that being said, this department of UCLA no longer exists.
Right.
They have found other things to spend their money on. Kathy says, is it possible she made up the sexual abuse just to get someone in there to investigate? Like she was experiencing something that no one would take seriously, so she had to come up with a story. Honestly, they believed her and went out there. It was when she's like, by the way, I'm being raped, that they were like, we're crazy, we're out.
Which is so ridiculous. Again, like they'll believe that things are flying across the room. My son broke his arm. This guy was hospitalized. This all happened. But the second she brings up assault, which is another form of physical abuse and being hurt, they're like, whoa, that's too hard to believe. Like, again, imagine that.
Like, no, we're out.
That's too far. That doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah, they really were all in. Like, the guy even said, we were super excited when we found out about it. We were on our way. And then she said that, oh, by the way, I was sexually assaulted. And they're like, yeah, we're going to need to talk to this psychiatrist. Here's her name. Here's her number. And like, they left.
Put me on that team. Like, put me on the team.
It's like, okay, so it's like, so you guys were excited up to that point. That would have finding that out would have kicked me into high gear, because I'm at the point like, okay, now we've officially crossed the line, so I need to figure out what the hell's going on in this house, because you need my help.
It's like, oh, now, so we weren't really going to help people, were we?
Would I have suggested her go see a psychiatrist? Absolutely. Absolutely.
But even if it was really happening, I would have been a psychologist.
Yeah. I mean, she should see a psychologist either way.
Right.
But kids driving her crazy. Teenage boys.
At the same time, I'm not leaving because you told me that. In the back of my mind, I may think, oh, this woman's out of her freaking mind. But I'm going to sit there and figure out what's going on, because my thing is no, you're not crazy. Yes, something actually happened. Let's figure out what it was.
Yeah.
Let's figure out, is it a psychological thing that you made up? Something else happened and that is what your brain told you happened to you? Maybe. Did you get really sexually assaulted by a ghost? Maybe. The
Yeah.
only way we're going to find out what happened is by investigating.
And I agree with that too, because at the end of the day, regardless of if it's true or not, like, I don't think in good conscience I would have been able to walk away without
Absolutely not.
offering some kind of assistance, right? So either she really is being assaulted over and over by these entities, and these guys are just like, peace, you're fine, don't care,
Right.
like, you know what I mean? Or she's clearly experiencing a mental health crisis, needs to probably be institutionalized at that point, just for whatever, to get medication and to get evaluated. So regardless, to me, like, these men failed her. Like, that's kind of how I feel. You exploited somebody who was experiencing something really terrible, regardless of the cause, and you didn't help. That's how I feel. And then you turned your back on her too, and kind of you got what you wanted out of it, and then left.
Yeah,
So,
and then they came back 10 days later, not because she experienced something, but because the neighbors experienced something.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you'll believe what the neighbors tell you, but you won't believe what she's telling you.
Yeah, but what she's saying is too much. So yeah, that's where I got pretty like mad watching the documentary. Honestly,
Yeah,
I
wasn't too happy with them about that. I'm like, okay, this woman came to you guys in need. I understand thinking that she's crazy when she told you she was a sexual assault. I get that. But how can you in good conscience walk away and abandon her? Because at this point, if you do truly think she's crazy, now she is a danger to herself and her children.
Right.
So as a human being, or let's go back to those days, that wasn't being a man. Being a man would be stepping in and helping this woman figure out what the hell's going on and protecting her and them kids, even if it was protecting her from herself.
Exactly.
So they weren't even like, being a man was the thing to say back then. So they were not being a man. They were being wimpy and walking away from something that honestly probably scared the hell out of them.
Right.
I mean, I probably would have been scared, like, oh, this woman crazy. She might do something crazy to me if I stick around too long. But at the same time, my focus, anytime something is somebody tells me something paranormal is going on, and the word children is brought into it, I'm on my way, because you're an adult. You can figure stuff out. I'll help you, but if a kid's involved, you need Uncle Richie's help, and you need it right now. Like,
I mean, even with Marianne, she's got months-long waiting lists. But if it's kids being affected, you get bumped. And so when I've had people come into the store that are like, my kid, and I'm like, call and say,
I don't know anyone like that. No, I'm just
kidding.
Yeah,
and I'm like, Emily,
call Marianne.
Emily,
and Courtney too, huh?
People need to sleep, including the young people.
Yeah, I know.
For school.
If kids are being affected, like I'm in right now, like, let's go. Like, if I can, or if I can't get there myself to help you, like, I promise I know somebody who can get to you, and I will you tell me a child's involved, I will exhaust my list of people and find somebody to come to you if I can't get to you, but I will be there as soon as I can get there.
Right, because even if they think nothing's going on, right? But they're in there, they're seeing this woman drinking an extreme amount, having, if it's not real, having hallucinations. Her sons literally need to restrain her half the time because she's drunk, and they're just like, you're fine, like, we're good, we're just gonna go back.
You're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
One kid already got his arm broken, so like, if it's not spirit, then his mom did that.
Then it's abuse. So either way.
So now we're dealing with child abuse. Okay.
Right.
Why are we walking away from this case for any amount of time? 10 days doesn't seem that long. But when you put into perspective what was going on, 10 days is a lifetime.
And I think one of the sons had said, if I recall, in like one of the interviews, he was saying how every time they came and went to experience this stuff, that the activity would ramp up like times 10, house would come alive. So again, which we've talked about this before, but you have an instance of them coming in, riling everything up, and then leaving. And it's like, and it just frustrates me, because I think your goal, yes, catching evidence is important. Yes, understanding all this stuff is important, but helping the people affected is the number one reason you should be there.
Right.
If you happen to catch evidence in the meantime, cool. But that's just frustrating to me.
And like they basically admitted that their main goal was research, because they said when they met her, or when the one guy met her at the bookstore, he said there will be no charge if we can present it as research. Okay, that tells me the only thing you're worried about is figuring out what's going on to prove something. But we need to be focused on figuring out what's going on to help this woman and her family. That the point, when I'm doing an investigation, is not to prove that ghosts exist. I don't give a shit if you believe me or not. It's to find out what's happening in the house so I can help the people who live there and have to deal with it. And these people going in 25 deep every time, you guys are going in, you're poking the bear, and then you're leaving. So you're leaving a pissed off bear in this house with people, and you've already been told that it gets physical. So why are we going to go and irritate it even more?
Yeah. Who decided that these men were like the experts is what I want to know. Who did that?
That's one
They were
thing.
the ones that answered her.
So I forgot to bring this up. So faked proof, this, that, and the other thing. The gentleman in the YouTube that we linked tried or suggested that these photos, you would take them out and it would be air, so that's why that whole shaking your picture, because not only did the Polaroid do this, but the 35 millimeter would come through these rollers with developing chemical, and you would shake it. He tried to suggest that those are outlines of thumbprints, and I'm like, no, they're not.
No.
Because it wouldn't just be the tip of your thumb that would mess up that picture. Like there'd be
the whole thumb. Yeah.
So I don't buy into that particular debunk of the photos.
Not of those ones, but like the pure whiteout ones, maybe.
Yeah, those I'm especially because Polaroid, right? Because back when I took over Goddessili, there was the whole aura photo, and it was a freaking Polaroid. And it was so aggravating how many out of like a pack of 10 or something, how many of those would just come out wrong. And not even because you touched it, but if you don't keep Polaroid at a certain temperature, the whole pack will be bad. You will not know till you try to take a picture. So, which is why I think the world has moved on from such type of photography. But we're getting close to the end of our hour, and we all three, before we went live, like, we have things to do. So if you have time and you guys watch some of the documentaries, want to keep discussing, join us in the Discord. I did put these 2 pictures up, and so you should be able to respond and tell us what you think. This is one of the few that I go, maybe. I don't immediately go, oh my God, kids, but I do believe that there were human influences kind of magnifying some stuff.
Oh yeah.
But, and I just found it really interesting that a university had a paranormal department. And but you know what? In Akron, they have an exorcism class, like a whole. Yeah, and they have Marianne come and speak like once a year at it. And I'm like, you let me know the next time, because I want to come audit this class.
Don't say that to me, because the amount of times I've considered going back and getting a bachelor's in like occult studies is ridiculous.
I know. And I'm like, now I need to go back to school just for exorcism classes. Like that's
right.
But so some of the woo-woo was finally meeting commonplace thinking and some science. So if you want to continue the discussion or suggest other cases that maybe you've ran into and would like to know more, right, Divine? Like, I think we all need to go. I think it's Akron, University of Akron has it. So I think we all need to all enroll for these classes and show up in mass. But in the Discord, join us, make suggestions, continue the conversation. We will be back next Wednesday at 10 a.m. with a new topic or case. Emily will be reading in store today. So if you're local, you can pop in and see her. If not, she can do it via Zoom. So
Sure can.
book her
Also
on.
this evening, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. This evening, myself, Emily, Nick, we will be back 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Woo woo readings here on Twitch only. So join us, come have fun. Even if you don't want a reading, just BS. We like hanging out and talking and goofing off too. And Richie, you wanted to talk about your books one more time before we're out?
Yeah. So my new book is going live on Friday. So the 5th, 2 days from now, my new book will be available. Answering a question, Melissa, you asked me last week. No, it's not available for pre-order. I don't know how to do that. But it will be available to order on Friday. And of course, my other 2 books are always available. Anybody who is local who can go to Goddess Elite, if you want a signed copy, I'm sure you can let Melissa know, and I can get one to her, and they can get it to you. And hopefully soon I can actually be in the store with my books again. But as Melissa knows, later this month I am going to have a whole lot starting for me that I'm going to be focused on. So who knows when I'm actually going to be able to sit in store again.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I forget. I thought I had something else, but it was halfway out and it stopped. So
all right. Well, thanks for joining. We look forward to seeing everybody next week, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, with more paranormal things to talk about.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
All right. Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Bye.